Those present were the strongest to be among the 9 tribes. The leaders of all 9 tribes were there personally, as were the holiness of nirvana. Those present were the strongest to be among the 9 tribes. The leaders of all 9 tribes were there personally, as were the holiness of nirvana. The fact that the 9 tribes had still been able to rule the region after Emperor Kua's passing served as an undeniable testament of their powers. Several pairs of eyes turned to Yi Futian when he came. Notable among them were the mighty ones from the Zhu clan, and Yin Tianjiao, princess of Emperor Wu. Also Shi Chan of the Shi clan and Chang Huai, who worked with the Vermilion Bird clan and the Zhu tribe. The Vermilion Bird clan consisted of demonic beasts, with the leader having once served as Emperor Kua's steed. The student of Saint Chiming worked with the Nanli tribe, while the student of Saint Jiuyo worked with the Raven tribe, the mighty ones of which descended from the bloodline of the 3-legged golden raven. The Bailey tribe had chosen to work with the prestigious young saint from Flaming Prison City, after Yi Futian refused their offer. And finally, the ones from Crimson Cloud City worked with the Shang tribe. All 9 cultivators who internalized the flames of the way were of proving holiness level, though there were others of higher level flame power. Only those who had attained proving holiness were permitted. That was because only people of proving holiness level could enter the ruins of Emperor Kua. Those rules were likely due to concerns of the 9 tribes over their ability to keep the more powerful in check. There may have been other reasons, but only the 9 tribes knew for certain. Since we're all here, let's move out, the Zhu clan elder with a fiery red beard said. The leader of the Zhu clan stood right beside him, and his aura was unreadable, looking like a god of fire simply by standing around. Everyone nodded and began walking. The leaders of the 9 tribes walked to the spectral gate, and all performed hand seals. 9 dazzling wisps of flames emerged from their hands and shot at the gate. 9 beams of light rained down, and the gate seemed to have detected some kind of summons. A terrifying fiery aura and air flowed, and the entire gate twisted, with a huge hole appearing shortly after. Let's head inside, a voice said. Everyone moved for the gate, their bodies immediately disappearing after stepping inside. Let's go, City Lord Yi, the gray-robed elder said. Yi Futian nodded, and looked at Xiaqing Yuan and the others. The princess then said, "Be careful." Yeah. Yi Futian replied before moving alongside the massive group, disappearing inside the gate. The mighty ones of the 9 tribes went in next. After everyone else had entered, the 9 tribe leaders followed. Only members of the younger generation of the 9 tribes, as well as mighty ones from all forces all over Crimson Dragon Realm, were left outside the gate. They all stood guard over the vast territory, waiting for their compatriots' return. Let's just train at the side, Xiaqing Yuan said, and everyone nodded. All of them went elsewhere and sat cross-legged, waiting for Yi Futian and the others to return. Yi Futian entered another space right after stepping inside the gate. When they entered, they sensed scorching wool washing all over the place. It looked like it had been cooked throughout. Fire sprouted from the red-hot ground everywhere. The will of the great path of fire was all around them. The world of fire, Yi Futian muttered. He looked up and saw that even the sky was scorched red. The fiery red sky seemed to have been shaped into peculiar patterns. 2 huge balls of fire were seen like there were 2 suns in the sky. However, they were concave and looked like black holes of fire. Their shapes made them look like a pair of eyes. Yi Futian's mind was rattled. He peered closely at the sky, and saw more than just the eyes. He then saw a boundlessly huge face, and the fiery red hair spread out throughout the sky, like glowing, red clouds in the sky. A humanoid form. Yi Futian was not the only one who thought so. The other 8 mighty ones not affiliated with the 9 tribes all looked up at the sky. They all seemed to have seen something, and looked rather astonished. Let's go, a mighty one said. Hot winds blew, and it seemed that even the winds were imbued with the will of the great path of fire. The winds were scorching hot when they hit them. The place seemed like a holy ground for training in the ways of the flames. What did Emperor Kua leave behind here? The 9 tribes went out of their way to invite geniuses from all realms. Could it be that the 9 tribes who had once served Emperor Kua were unable to get it themselves? Is that why they wanted help from outsiders? What would I need to do? Yi Futian asked the mighty one from the Wu clan by his side. Fire spirits are found in the ruins. Countless fire spirits of differing strengths are born in this place. All of those fire spirits have the essence of will of the great path of fire. What you'd need to do is to take them and make them your own, the mighty one answered. Is that all? Futian asked. Indeed. To possess the boundless will of the great path and transform yourself, you'd need to keep extracting and refining them. The process isn't complete until you're able to bring out extreme might using the way of flames, the mighty one elaborated. Futian nodded. The other mighty ones moved forward. Futian wondered if he would have been able to ignore the obstacles posed by plane limitations and bring out combat prowess exceeding his level, simply by using the way of the flames. It was no surprise why the 9 tribes placed so much importance on the fire manipulation abilities of the mighty ones. It possibly had something to do with the ruins. The way of the flames was of utmost importance there. As such, those who were incapable of internalizing the will of the great path would not have been allowed to enter. The mighty ones of the 9 tribes moved forward and split up, heading in different directions. Dangers lurked everywhere in that ancestral land. If the 9 outsiders were to simply wander on their own, there was no doubt that they would end up dead. Therefore, each tribe was in charge of the safety of one person. But of course, the 9 tribes naturally had their reasons for doing so. They would not have been so meticulous with their selection process otherwise. All of them placed high hopes on their chosen ones. The Wu clan chose to work with Futian, so they followed right behind him. The Zhu clan was there as well. They were tasked with the protection of Tianjiao. A fiery desert area was right before them, looking endless. Futian finally saw fire spirits emerging. One fire dragon after another was seen spread out in different places. All of them were burning with golden flames. They had a humanoid, yet fiery build. They all pounced when they saw the group. Despite being spirits, they had not actually been awakened and only acted on instinct, making them see the humans as prey. Let's go. Mighty ones from both clans said to Futian and Tianjiao respectively. Both of them flashed and headed out in different directions. The mighty one from the Wu clan paid close attention to Futian. The Zhu clan wished for Futian to be of aid to Tianjiao. It was a good chance to see what both of them were capable of. Boom! Tianjiao charged and her entire body burst with extremely dazzling golden flames. Holy light burst out of her body, making her look like a furnace of the great path. She stepped out at blitzing speed as she headed for a fire spirit. While the fire spirits were not intelligent beings, they nonetheless possessed saint-level auras, as if they were flames of the way born of the world itself. However, Tianjiao was not hesitant. She charged right before a fire spirit and lashed out. That construct of flames charged at her roaring, but was quickly pinned down. A terrifying whirlpool seemed to have appeared on Tianjiao, devouring the fire spirit's body and making it one with her own. She was able to absorb fire spirits of such levels into her body without pause. The mighty one from the Zhu clan watched the scene quietly. Tianjiao, princess of Emperor Wu, had indeed inherited the true essence of her father. She was able to incorporate fires of the great path directly into her, wielding such powers in a variety of means, making her extremely powerful. Futian charged at a fire spirit as well. Raging flames were sensed all over the place. Boom! A fire spirit charged right at Futian, intending to eat him up alive. However, the will of the great path coursed about his body and holy light flowed. The flames were quickly internalized. The fire spirit roared and wanted to destroy him outright, yet its body kept shrinking. It continued until every single bit of its way of flames was taken into Futian's body, being siphoned straight to his life palace. The mighty ones from both the Zhu Wu clans nodded when they saw the scene. While the city lord of Qianye City might not have been well versed in fire powers, but that was not to say that he was weak. Such beginner levels of fire spirits were of no threat to him at all. Both Tianjiao and Futian continued moving forward, destroying any fire spirit that emerged from the desert and consuming their powers. Time passed, and as they crossed the desert area, hundreds of wills of the great path of the flames were already found in Futian's life palace. They came to a lava-filled area when they crossed the desert. The lava burst everywhere, and there were even more fire spirits to be found there. However, the will of the great path of flames was different from what was seen before. But things ended up almost the same nonetheless. Both of them charged into the fires of the lava, and continued to internalize the fire spirits within. The mighty ones followed closely behind. The mighty one from the Zhu clan was relieved to find that Yi Futian had not gotten in the way in the slightest, as he consumed the flames without a problem. It seemed that Yi Futian had a way of taking down flames after all. At that moment, the lava boiled and gushing sounds were heard. Yi Futian looked forward and saw the lava boil, from which a war god of lava appeared. That thing was no longer a simple fire spirit, as it had condensed itself into a solid body and materialized into a giant of lava, emanating a terrifying aura. Saint of true self-level, Yi Futian muttered to himself. The giant of lava took a look at Yin Tianjiao and Yi Futian, lashing out with both its hands. Anything hit by the great, big hands of lava would have probably melted on the spot. Both of them evaded at breakneck speeds. Yin Tianjiao looked at Yi Futian and said, "Work with me." It was apparent that she was getting ready to take on the giant, even though it was of Saint of true self-level. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. The lava giant took a huge step forward and clapped its hands in Yin Tianjiao direction. Yin Tianjiao was unfazed and charged at the hand. Her body dazzled with glittering light, power bursting from her body. She threw forward her hand. Though slender, it still contained the might of the great path. Rumbling noises were heard, and the world around her resonated with her being. She thrust and an enormous fiery handprint appeared. The lava giant took a huge step forward and clapped its hands in Yin Tianjiao direction. Yin Tianjiao was unfazed and charged at the hand. Her body dazzled with glittering light, power bursting from her body. She threw forward her hand. Though slender, it still contained the might of the great path. Rumbling noises were heard, and the world around her resonated with her being. She thrust and an enormous fiery handprint appeared. Boom! A loud rumble was heard, and the lava giant's hand cracked, but quickly mended. The fires melted her great handprint. She frowned slightly at fire spirits' insane healing powers. Sword wills howled around Yi Futian. Swords of Cassiopeia zipped past and arrived right before the lava giant, which roared as the swords came near. They were engulfed in the fires right away and melted into nothingness. Level superiority was at play in this fight. Yin Tianjiao's aura became even stronger at that moment. A tall, imposing figure like an empress seemed to have appeared behind her. A towering aura swept all around her body as her might burst in a frenzy. The will of the great path circled about her. Thousands of wills of the great path coursed, and the area surrounding her seemed to have become a world of destruction. Many wills of the great path of flames all gushed into her body at that moment, and it felt as if her body was burning. The will of the great path around her was furiously absorbed into her body. Yi Futian took a look at her, and conjured the halberd of time and space into his hand. Yi Futian burst into the air with a flash, disappearing right away, and appearing right before the lava giant, bringing down the weapon like a bolt of lightning. The lava giant blocked with its hand, clashing with the halberd of time and space. Rumbling noises were heard as the hand crumbled inch by inch. The fires exploded at the weapon, and Yi Futian himself. Still, the giant absorbed the power of lava without pause to reconstruct its broken arm. Yin Tianjiao stepped out and attacked as well. Her great handprint resonated with the great path around her, as she brought her attack down on the fire spirit. The lava giant attempted a block, which caused its arm to quickly crumble inch by inch. Both Yi Futian and Yin Tianjiao continued to press on their attacks until they pierced the lava giant's body. Yin Tianjiao's rules within her handprint cracked open the fire spirit. A sliver of lava-colored will of the great path intended to flee, but Yin Tianjiao grabbed and pinned it down. Towering fires burst, intending to consume Yin Tianjiao. As holy light dazzled, her body almost burned, devouring the fire bit by bit. "You could have the next one," Yin Tianjiao said to Yi Futian, who nodded without saying anything. The mighty one of the Zhu clan added, "Why not internalize the will of the great path inside you to a certain level of strength first? Doesn't matter, Yin Tianjiao replied plainly. Yi Futian took a look at the Mighty One. Since entering the ruins, the Zhu Mighty One spoke his mind without reservation. The ruins had boundless wills all around. The numbers were astronomical. To people who trained in fire-based powers, the ruins were like a holy land all its own. The reason why the 9 tribes supported their candidates was to allow them to internalize their will of the great path and increasing their strength. But what was their ultimate goal? Yi Futian and Yin Tianjiao continued moving forward without thought. The lava area was incredibly vast and looked endless as well. Both of them plundered as much as they were able to, having no idea how many fire spirits they had destroyed and stripped of their will. They weren't the only ones. Mighty ones from the other 7 tribes did the same in other areas too. A short time later, they entered a territory filled with demonic fire beasts. A city seemed to have appeared right before them, a city of fire. They stopped and stared at it. The city had many steps leading to the top, and the entire place looked like it was basking in fire. The phenomenon made it seem like a city of the sun. It is best to internalize the will of the great path of flames within your bodies. You might run into greater challenges ahead, a mighty one from the Zhu clan said. Yin Tianjiao and Yi Futian nodded, then found a spot to sit cross-legged. Yi Futian closed his eyes and dazzling light appeared around his body. Swishing sounds were heard in his life palace. At that moment, his life palace turned into a world of flames. Flames of the way circled about endlessly. Yi Futian knew that those powers were not his. They were simply things taken by force. Even if he were to be able to internalize and use them for battle, they could be destroyed. That would be the end of it. Essentially, he was only using external powers instead of relying on his own skills. It was something he would not have done in his usual training. Those flames could only be used as trump cards, akin to convenient devices. That was unless his plane could reach the required level. Then he could truly make those flames his own. If at Proving Saint level, he could really enhance his own powers. Of course, there would have been no way for him to finish internalizing those flames in such a short period of time. The greater the flame's intensity, the harder it would have been for him to make them his own. There seemed to be another silhouette of his in his life palace, who sat cross-legged and holy light burst from it. The deed of thorough comprehension flowed about in a frenzy within him. His body was now like a furnace, melting and internalizing the wills of the great path. The world tree swished about. Powers of all elements been turned into auras of flames, enveloping his body. Auras of the world around him flowed into his body, entering his life palace through his veins. The first of his flames were completed a while later. Flames of increasingly greater numbers melted to become one with him. Fiery auras of the boundless great path flowed into his life palace. Not far away from where Yi Futian was, Yin Tianjiao was also training with her eyes closed. They sat that way for a long time. When they completed their training, they opened their eyes. Together, they began ascending steps before them, moving towards the city of the sun. With every step they took, the heat of the staircase grew increasingly intense, like they were walking on the flames of the great path. The sun hung high above with countless golden ravens circling around it. The birds dove towards them with great force, as if they viewed the group as intruders. Everyone feared they were on the verge of destruction. Yi Futian sensed the birds' auras, and found many of them to be at Saint of True Self levels. Fiery auras of the great path flowed around the sun, coalescing into dazzling beams of light. The beams shot forth like divine fire. The golden rays were engulfed by them, and they exploded into flaming auras of the great path. What transpired had caught the attention of the mighty ones from both the Zhu and Wu clans. Yi Futian's fire ability did not seem weak at all. His own powers combined with what had been absorbed were like rays of the sun, capable of melting anything. It even seemed to contain will of the sword, which gave the beams devastating shredding power. He conjured the halberd of time and space, grabbing the will of the great path. He charged at the flock of golden ravens that blocked out the sky. Yin Tianjiao's attacks were just as powerful. Her entire body was bathed in the dazzling holy light of flames. It was apparent that, like Yi Futian, she had also internalized the flames. She melded them with her own attacks and crushed everything before her. Humanoid spirits appeared amidst the great number of golden ravens. A silhouette dove straight for Yi Futian. Its eyes emanated an extremely terrifying demonic aura. Yi Futian sensed the aura as the fire of the sun rained down, intending to penetrate the creature's body. However, it suddenly became a sea of flames, engulfing the area Yi Futian was in. A terrifying head appeared, intending to devour him. The gray-robed mighty one of the Wu clan came behind him. "Be careful, that thing is out to take your spirit." The people of the 9 tribes would not have let anything happen to their candidates, not before they reached their destination. The journey was meant to strengthen their powers and familiarize them with the way of the flames of the 9 tribes' ancestral land. The mighty one lashed out with his hand and dazzling golden flames fired at the being coming at Yi Futian. It let loose a harrowing roar as it was turned into will of the great path. "Thank you, Senior," Yi Futian said before continuing on. The rest of the mighty ones arrived soon as well, moving up the steps towards the Sun Castle. Upright figures stood guard at the gates of the city. They cast their glances forward, and a frightening and immensely profound aura swept over the field, turning into terrifying storms that resonated with the sun in the sky. "It has been years since you last came. Is there one worthy of entering this time?" The 9 tribes had been trying for many years. They had toiled for ages, but had never succeeded. As such, they were forced to begin borrowing external powers. The intent was to unravel the secrets of their ancestral land through the hands of ingenious outsiders. Even so, not one in all those generations had succeeded. The guards wondered how these new chosen ones would fare. They hoped that the clans would not let them down again. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. High above the Sun Castle, and the sun above the castle, golden ravens descended upon them like a flood. High above the Sun Castle, and the sun above the castle, golden ravens descended upon them like a flood. Yi Futian and Yin Tianjiao were doing their best to hunt them down and take any manifested will of the great path. Duan Wuji, prince of Emperor Dong's palace, and the mighty ones of the Zhong tribe were there as well. Duan Wuji's body was surrounded by a terrifying firestorm, as if it was able to devour anything it touched. He extended his hand as he charged at the birds. A black fireball manifested in his hand, which turned into a terrifying maelstrom. The maelstrom devoured the birds one after another on the spot, before having their will of the great path extracted and absorbed into his body. There was a mighty one from the Zhong tribe, who went on to kill the golden ravens with Duan Wuji, who then gifted any will of the great path gathered to him, as the mighty one worked with him in the hunt. Dazzling holy light glittered far away. It was as if golden ravens had swooped down. It was the mighty ones of the Raven tribe, as well as the student of Saint Juyo. The mighty ones of the Raven tribe had the blood of the golden ravens flowing in their veins. They were impressed at the scene before them deep down. Such was their ancestral land, where the will of the great path was abundant and turned into countless golden ravens. The student of Saint Juyo was extremely powerful. Black lotuses surrounded him, and black fire sprouted from the flowers, burning down the birds and absorbing the manifested will of the great path into the flowers themselves. He quickly ended up killing quite a number of golden ravens. His life spirit blossomed, and a pure black lotus appeared. He stepped onto the flower, which subsequently enveloped his entire body. The taken will of the great path gushed within, and was absorbed by the black lotus. After that, the student of Saint Chiming, Shi Chan of the Shi clan, Chong Huai of the Chong clan, and many other mighty ones arrived. All of them charged into the battlefield with the 9 tribes without hesitation, hunting down countless golden ravens, and making nourishment out of them. The mighty ones chosen by the 9 tribes were capable of internalizing all of the wills of the great path taken throughout their journeys, and making them their own, thus enabling them to easily kill the golden ravens at Saint of True Self level. The fire powers of everyone present were very powerful. Yi Futian understood why the 9 tribes picked only cultivators who were versed in fire powers. It was not surprising at all that none of them had any expectations for him. Cultivators who were lacking in firepower had no way of working on and internalizing the wills of the great path in that place to enhance their powers. That meant that they had no way to participate in the later battles. Yi Futian found, while he was doing battle, that the other mighty ones continuously took wills of the great path while they were doing battle, enhancing their own powers as quickly as they were able to. The deed of thorough comprehension was in full effect. Yi Futian's body was like a furnace of the great path, as well as that of the sun at the same time. His sun life spirit was infused directly with his body, enabling him to devour the taken wills of the great path on the spot. He became able to easily make such wills at Saint of True Self level into something of his own. Boom! A huge golden raven dived at them. It had extremely sharp eyes, looking as if it had acquired intelligence. That golden raven seemed to have harbored will of the great path, at unblemished saint level. Everything it touched was quickly burned down. That huge being charged right at Yi Futian. The gray-robed elder behind Yi Futian stepped out, and pointed his finger at the air. Dazzling golden fire spread throughout their surroundings, before penetrating right through the golden raven's huge body. Fiery holes appeared on that huge body of the bird. Terrifying golden chains of the great path appeared from within the holes, penetrating through the bird's body and shackling it in place. "City Lord Yi," he called. Yi Futian appeared right away. His finger pointed right before him, and great fires shot out right away, devouring the golden raven's body, along with the will of the great path at unblemished saint level. The unblemished saint aura was extremely powerful. Yi Futian felt extremely hot all over when he absorbed the bird. It was as if he was about to be burned to a crisp. The fires of the furnace were unable to make it into the way of fires that he required. He had internalized too many Saint of True Self level wills of the great path along the way. However, the will of the great path at unblemished saint level exceeded his capacity to easily internalize the flames, due to plain limitations. That bit of Renhuang will of the great path seemed to have fused within his body, making the light on his body shine even holier. He used that will of the great path of Renhuang with the fires of true self, to work on the flames of the way of unblemished saint level. Time passed, and Yi Futian plundered countless wills of the great path of saint of true self level, as well as many unblemished saint ones. He then stopped fighting altogether, walking up to a spot. He trained with his eyes closed, internalizing the flames in silence. Among the others, there were some who were still fighting, and some working on the flames. All of them were doing their best to enhance their fire powers to the greatest extent. Yi Futian continued doing battle at times, and taking wills of the great path, while he was working on the taken wills. The group plundered and trained in a frenzy at the Sun Castle, forgetting about the passage of time altogether. They had ended up training there for a month before they realized it. The flames on their bodies had long become something terrifying. While the wills of the great path absorbed exceeded their respective planes, they were nonetheless able to internalize the flames, due to having worked continuously on them. Despite not being able to enhance their planes right away, the internalized flames were able to be used in combat nonetheless. Everyone on the battlefield became unervingly powerful by then. Duan Wuji, the prince of Emperor Dong's palace, stood there. Terrifying fiery whirlpools appeared around him. Boundless aquamarine-colored flames coursed about him. He extended his palm and absorbed it. Golden ravens around him were all absorbed into his body in a frenzy, which was then internalized by the flames within. The black lotuses of the student of Saint Juyo seemed to have turned huge, and his flames burst in full force, burning everything down. Those golden ravens were all burned down. Every single one of them brought extremely formidable power of the flames to bear, until none of the massive flock of golden ravens was left flying in the sky. The ray of the sun above the Sun Castle was cast onto everyone's bodies. The sun seemed to have a true golden raven letting out a shrilled cry. Terrifying light was cast down onto the 9 mighty ones, as if they seemed to have been embedded with mystical connections. The battlefield was empty, making the participants realize that there was a limit to the bird's appearance after all. When they became powerful enough to absorb and internalize those golden ravens easily, the spirit of the bird disappeared altogether. Frightening aura was sent sweeping out from the Sun Castle before them. All of them began to walk towards the construct. The mighty ones of the 9 tribes seemed to be walking up in the front like they were on a pilgrimage. One mighty one from each of the 9 tribes walked to the front, and came before a being in front of the Sun Castle's gates. All 9 of the mighty ones stood before that being. The mighty ones bowed slightly, and then extended their fingers, drawing paper cuts on them, and let their blood drip. The blood was shot to the being on the castle, which then flowed on its body. The being then looked up at the sky, and the sun up there shone on it. The 9 glittered with extremely dazzling light. It was as if a blood-colored thread had connected them. The 9 mighty ones of the 9 tribes then returned to their respective chosen ones. The gray-robed mighty one came to Yi Futian's side and said, "Do what you've seen me do. You'd be connected to the matrix afterward." Yi Futian nodded, and pricked his finger as well. Blood dripped from his finger, and a ray of light shone onto his body. The being on the castle connected to him, and a blood-colored thread was seen in the air. Yi Futian seemed to have seen an illusion right there and then, as if he was linked together with that being at the castle, flourishing and perishing alongside it. All chosen ones of the 9 tribes did the same as well. The space seemed to have a huge matrix conjured, engulfing them within. The center of the matrix was that sun in the air, shining on everyone below. Only one among the 9 of you will be able to enter the ancestral land. It is time for you to battle amongst yourselves. The mighty ones from the 9 tribes said to the people at their side. All 9 of the tribes had chosen their own candidates, and the upcoming battle would determine who would earn the right to enter the ancestral land. The outcome of the battle would also determine which of the 9 tribes would be able to have their ancestral lands opened. Who would be the first to do battle? A mighty one of the Zhu clan said. He turned his eyes at Yin Tianjiao, hoping that they had not chosen the wrong candidate that time, and that she would have enabled the Zhu clan to open up their ancestral land. Many turned their eyes to Yin Tianjiao and Duan Wuji. The scene made the mighty one of the Zhu clan lift his brow slightly. The mighty one from the Zhu clan took one look at the gray-robed mighty one at Yi Futian's side, as if he was signaling something. "Let's see you fight first, City Lord Yi," the gray-robed mighty one said to him telepathically. Yi Futian noticed the eyes of that mighty one from the Zhu clan. He was hoping to avoid having Yin Tianjiao fight first, as it would attract too much attention. Yi Futian nodded, and stepped out without saying much. Another figure walked out from the other side, right after he emerged. It was none other than Shi Chan, who was working with the Vermilion Bird tribe. She glared at Yi Futian. Intense flames coursed about in her eyes. She was scorching hot all over her. She naturally noticed that Yi Futian had a sun life spirit as well, which meant that he was capable of wielding flames. She lost to Xia Qingyuan back in the fight in Jianmu City, losing their flames of the way. She took that loss as an insult. At the moment, the match was essentially one that was fire fighting against fire. She was confident in not losing to Yi Futian. No words were spoken. The sun hung high up in the air when Shi Chan emerged. 9 suns appeared at the same time above her. Terrifying rays of the sun were fired, containing fires of the great path of destruction. Boom! Flames burst all over Yi Futian's body right away. But it was as if he was a furnace of the great path, devouring the scorching beams shot at him. Shi Chan took one step out. The ground rang, and more suns appeared in the sky, hanging high above and surrounded Yi Futian. All of those suns fired frightening will of the great path of flames, unendingly right at Yi Futian. Fiery aura that was even more raging bloomed, and Yi Futian's body had turned entirely into a furnace of the great path. The beams of fire shot were continuously consumed by the furnace, preventing them from burning his body. Shi Chan performed hand seals and multiple suns, circling Yi Futian, to close in on him in an instant, as if they were about to merge into a true sun. She then unleashed the wills of the great path of flames that she had imbued into the sun. Devastating fiery beams shot from that sun, making Yi Futian, who was being engulfed in it, feel that doomsday was near, and he was about to be devoured by the sun. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. The 9 powerful cultivators had all refined a great deal of will. This was an external force. With it, they could all exert destructive power far beyond their level. The 9 powerful cultivators had all refined a great deal of will. This was an external force. With it, they could all exert destructive power far beyond their level. The power of the sun flare that Shi-chan was putting forth was completely different from that which she had used during her battle with Xia Qingyuan. The part of the air that Yi Futian was in seemed to be within an actual sun. Beams of destructive flame will shot towards him. His body turned into a furnace tripod, and he was covered in flames. When the beams of flame will reached him, they were swallowed up by the furnace tripod, and so they did not even touch his body. The sun seemed about to explode. Destructive power filled the air, trying to bury Yi Futian within it. Ancient characters were floating around Yi Futian as he released the deed of thought comprehension. All of his will melded and turned into flames. His body was the furnace that swallowed up Shi-chan's sun flare, and she was swallowed up within it. The people outside the battlefield could barely see Yi Futian. All they could see was fire. The burning storm swept out, but the people surrounding him stood firm. No one there was weak. The terrible storm gradually dissipated. Shi-chan stared forward. The furnace tripod was still there, and Yi Futian's body was contained within it. A furious look came over her face. The will that she had sent against him had not only not hurt him, but it had also actually been refined by him. Everyone else looked at Yi Futian and felt a flicker of nervousness. The terrifying furnace tripod surrounded him and refined the power of heaven and earth, and all the law power into power that he could use. This was an incredibly strong technique. No wonder he had been able to come here. It seemed that his cultivation techniques could be used with flames. The ability to refine things out of flames was also very powerful. A look of surprise came over the faces of the Wu clan cultivators. It seemed that the Zhu clan might have been underestimating him when they had chosen them. Even among the flames, he was still strong. Shi-chan transformed into the divine body of 9 suns, becoming like a sun goddess as she was bathed in divine fire. She shot towards Yi Futian. Her spells could not shake him, so she had to attack him directly. She gathered her power as she rushed towards him. He reached out, and countless sun fists cut through the air like huge fireballs. They slammed into Yi Futian, containing immense destructive and explosive power. Boom! The sun furnace on Yi Futian's body shook endlessly. A huge sword appeared before him, formed from Cassiopeia, and forged from the fire of the Great Path. It was a flame saint sword. Bang! There was a loud sound as Yi Futian rose into the air and lashed out with the sword. It cut through the sun fists. This sword of the Great Path was immeasurably brilliant. It cut down from the sky, slicing through the air towards Shi-chan. Shi-chan raised her arms. The 9 suns protected her as her hands rushed up to collide with the sword. The sword cut down wildly through the fist wills, piercing towards Shi-chan's arms. Terrible flames suddenly swept out, completely enveloping her and seeming to refine her. She gave a groan. She felt as if her body was being eroded away by the flames. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth. She retreated, but Yi Futian did not let up. His sword continued forward, with flames spitting out of it. Shi-chan went pale. Her tender body fell to the ground, blood flowing continuously from her mouth. Yi Futian flashed down to the ground in front of her. Shi-chan looked at him and said, "I am defeated." But Yi Futian ignored her, and the flames of the Great Path flew overhead. Shi-chan looked at him coldly, but seeing the resolve in Yi Futian's eyes, she finally sighed and gave up the flames of the way, letting Yi Futian take control of them. Soon, the divine fire around Shi-chan dissipated, and all was calm once again. And Yi Futian was not planning on giving up. There was a furious look on Shi-chan's face. She glared at Yi Futian, but Yi Futian ignored her. When he had obtained Renhuang's flames of the way in Jianmu City, Shi-chan had not been polite to him, and had directly attacked him. If she would not pay attention to the rules and only care about strength, then he would naturally not be polite to her either. Seeing the cold look that Yi Futian was giving her, Shi-chan's face grew as icy as frost. But she finally gave him the rest of her flames of the way. Yi Futian took them. Only then did Yi Futian let her go. After Shi-chan was defeated, the sunlight that had fallen upon her went dim. Even the cultivators on the castle walls connected to her were weakened. They would never be as powerful as before. It all looked incredibly magical. It seemed like when the whole matrix was only missing a single piece. It dimmed until there was no light left. And Yi Futian's light shone brighter. The figures on the castle walls that were connected to the Wu clan could breathe a little more. The 9 families of the Vermilion Bird clan had already withdrawn from this clan dispute. Shi-chan returned with an apologetic look on her face. The Vermilion Bird tribes did not say much. They just sighed inwardly. Even the descendant of the Shi clan from the ancient tree in Jianmu City was not strong enough. Yi Futian returned to his original position and sat cross-legged, continuing to refine the will that he had seized. However, refining this will would take time. Even though the flames of the way that he had refined for his use were quite strong, he couldn't mold other wills into them whenever he wanted. The cultivators of the Zhu clan looked at Yi Futian. He was stronger than they had even imagined. Later, they might be able to use him to deal with Duan Wuji and Saint Juyo's disciples. They were sharp enough to see that these people would be difficult to entangle. At that moment, Duan Wuji stepped forward and walked to the center of the crowd. Everyone shared a single thought. This prince was a son of Run Huang in the Crimson Dragon realm. He dominated the eastern part of the realm, and his flames of the way were extremely strong. People called them God-eating fire. As he stepped forward, his gaze fell upon a cultivator of Flaming Prison City, who was allied with the Bailey tribe. The cultivator frowned slightly. He did not want to oppose Duan Wuji, but it seemed to be too late to avoid it. His every step shook the very air. Burning wool swept out, and hellfire blazed. A powerful flaming god of war appeared behind the cultivator from Flaming Prison City, and his body merged with it. He grew larger, turning into a flaming war saint. Duan Wuji looked at the tall figure, but his expression was unchanged. The dark green flames around him blazed and flowed, seeming to form a devouring storm. It swallowed up all the flame in the area around them and integrated them into itself. Bang! The burning god of war stepped forward, and a terrible aura swept out. Duan Wuji stood firmly and rose into the air. He stretched out his hands, and suddenly, the dark green flames formed a terrible storm that grew larger and larger. In a flash, a dark green vortex appeared in the air above Duan Wuji's head. In addition, the aura that was swallowing up all the flames in the area grew larger. The terrible vortex shot towards the god of war and covered him. The cultivator from Flaming Prison City lashed out with a fist, and suddenly, it seemed as if lava and flames were shooting out from him. Firelight shone all around, threatening to melt the vortex before him. But the vortex swallowed up the lava as well. Endless green light shone from it, falling upon the fiery god of war's body, and slowly eating up the flames upon him. It was turning him dark green as well, making it look like demonic fire. The cultivator from Flaming Prison City felt that even his soul would be devoured and integrated into that terrible fire. His face grew dark. Did he have no power to resist? His opponent's flames of the way were crushing his own. The flames raged wildly, and the fiery god of war's body began to shrivel. Soon, his figure exploded. The flames of the way were all devoured, and the terrifying vortex returned the air above Duan Wuji, after which it wrapped around him and poured into him little by little. "Give up," said Duan Wuji. Then he stepped back, just like Yi Futian had. This battle was a contest of flames. It would show who could refine and use flames for their attacks the best. When facing the cultivator from Flaming Prison City, Duan Wuji had shown complete mastery. A disciple of Saint Juyo stepped forward and challenged a cultivator from Crimson Cloud City, which was allied with the Shang tribe. There was another battle, and the cultivator from Crimson Cloud City, though he was a descendant of Ren Huang, was defeated by Saint Juyo's disciple. This disciple of Saint Juyo was skilled with Black Lotus Karma fire and had immense destructive power. He could burn away someone's very soul. All of the fire of the way that he seized, he refined into Black Lotus Karma fire, giving it incredible destructive power that he used to defeat his opponent. After 3 battles, there were only 3 people who had not fought yet. Yin Tianjiao took the initiative to step forward and challenge a disciple of Saint Chiming. Both of them were extremely strong and clashed many times. But in the end, Yin Tianjiao was able to withstand one more attack, and he defeated the disciple of Saint Chiming. Sunlight flooded the walls of Sun Castle. The cultivators of 4 great tribes shone with dark fire. The opportunity to reclaim their ancestral lands had once again passed them by. Of the 9 great cultivators, 8 had fought. Only Chang Huai had not yet fought. He frowned and glanced at the 4 cultivators. Duan Wuji Yin Tianjiao, the disciple of Saint Jiuyo, and Yi Futian. There was no clear choice. He was not assured of victory against any of them. In fact, he was likely to be defeated, but he could not avoid going out to fight. His gaze fell upon Yi Futian, who was sitting cross-legged, and was busy refining his flames of the way. There was a misunderstanding at Jianmu City, said Chang Huai. I never would have thought that you were so skilled with flames, Lord Yi. I ask that you show me what you can do. Yi Futian, who had just been cultivating, opened his eyes and glanced at Chang Huai. A loud sound rang out, and his body transformed into an enormous furnace. It rang out as he stood, and his body disappeared. The furnace blazed as brightly as the sun, and he appeared right in front of Chang Huai. He raised his fist to strike, and a powerful wave of qi swept out, slamming violently into Chang Huai's body. A look of shock came over Chang Huai's face, as a burst of powerful spatial will locked his body in place, making it feel as though it was impossible to move. Even though his flame spells were powerful, he could not avoid being affected by other powers. Chang Huai could only hastily raise his hand to attack. Raging flames burned the sky. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Yi Futian had completely transformed into a sun furnace. He shot forward, with fist will filling the sky, pushing the flames of the way before him. He was powerful enough to cut through anything like a blade through bamboo. Yi Futian had completely transformed into a sun furnace. He shot forward, with fist will filling the sky, pushing the flames of the way before him. He was powerful enough to cut through anything like a blade through bamboo. There was a loud sound as Chang Huai was sent flying backward. He felt like a hole had been pierced through him. A burst of flame entered into him, causing him to twist and distort his face in pain. Yi Futian walked forward step by step, looking indifferent and emotionless. Although he had refined some flames, and his attacks with the flames of the way were extremely strong, his defenses had not changed at all. Yi Futian's burst of power had made it so that he had had no way to respond, and so he had been badly wounded. The battle ended in an instant. Yi Futian walked in front of Chang Huai, and swept his cold gaze over him. He reached out, and flames of the way came out from his hand. Chang Huai went pale as he watched the figure before him. He had once ridiculed Yi Futian's reliance on women back in Jianmu City, but now, he had been so thoroughly crushed. Even though it was true that Yi Futian had attacked him without warning, even if he had been ready for him, it would have made no difference. His will had been seized, and his Runhuang will had been taken, just like with Shichan. Yi Futian had crushed the 2 geniuses of the ancient tree. Yi Futian returned to his original position and sat down. Everyone looked at him. This contest between them had not been anything special, and so they had not gotten a look at the opponent's strengths and weaknesses. But they could at least see that the Lord of Qinya City was not like they had imagined. Otherwise, it would not have only been 2 great tribes that would have went to invite him. After Chang Huai was defeated, there were only the representatives of 4 tribes left. Yin Tianjiao of the Zhu tribe, Duan Wuji standing in for the Zhong tribe, the disciple of Saint Jiuyo for the Raven tribe, and Yi Futian. These 4 were all very skilled at refining flames. Even now, they had their eyes closed and were cultivating, seizing every moment they could to refine the flames of the way that they had taken. In this place of ruins, the flames of the way were power. The one who could refine the most of them would be the strongest. At that moment, sunlight was falling upon Sun Castle. Only 4 beams of light were still shining. The light where Yi Futian was the brightest. He had defeated 2 great cultivators all by himself, and so he had seized a few more flames of the way. The light seemed to form a mystical matrix. However, this did not increase Yi Futian's power. He could feel the sunlight falling upon him. Seeing that all 4 of them were calmly and silently cultivating, the cultivators of the Zhu tribe cast their gaze over the battlefield. At that moment, there was only the 4 of them. They and the Wu tribe were together in this, which the Zhong tribe and the Raven tribe must have known. Thus, those two forces would probably not fight each other, which would let the Zhu tribe and the Wu tribe win the battle without lifting a finger. So this would be a 2-on-2 battle. He looked towards Duan Wuji, who was fighting for the Zhong tribe. He was probably more threatening than the disciple of Saint Jiuyo. Thinking of this, the cultivator from the Zhu tribe summoned a cultivator from the Wu tribe and said, "Have Lord Yi challenge Duan Wuji." They would fight for a bit, which would let them see how strong Duan Wuji was. What they had seen in the previous battle was just a performance. Duan Wuji had needed to use too much of his power to defeat his opponent. Yi Futian's performance had been outstanding, so he would probably be able to test Duan Wuji a bit more and see just how powerful the flames of the way that he had refined were, and how strong his god-eating fire was. That way, they would be able to find out as well. The cultivator from the Wu tribe looked out towards Yi Futian. The gray-robed figure walked over to him and said, "Lord Yi, why don't you fight Duan Wuji of the Zhong tribe in this battle?" Yi Futian opened his eyes and glanced at Duan Wuji. He was indeed quite strong. In his last battle, he had nearly crushed his opponent. He had not wasted any energy. His god-eating fire had swallowed up his opponent's flames of the way, and he had integrated the will that he had seized into his own god-eating fire. He was incredibly threatening. But if he wanted to make it to the end, this was an opponent that he would have to face sooner or later. He couldn't avoid it. It was just a matter of when. Therefore, he did not refuse. He stood up and walked out onto the battlefield. He looked out towards the cultivator from the Zhong tribe and Duan Wuji. Seeming to feel Yi Futian's gaze, Duan Wuji opened his eyes as well and looked back at him. There seemed to be dark green flames within his eyes, like demonic fire. He stood up as well and walked out onto the battlefield. It was still extremely hot in front of Sun Castle. Everything was extraordinarily calm at that moment. The two of them stood facing each other. Yi Futian turned into a great furnace once again, and the fire of the great path surrounded him, bathing his body. Dark green flames flowed around Duan Wuji, wrapping around his body. They slowly formed a vortex that grew stronger and stronger. It floated forward, swallowing up all the flames and slowly turning into a massive vortex of flames. The wild vortex shot towards Yi Futian, sucking up all the flame power in the area. Yi Futian used his deed of thought comprehension, and all his will turned into flames that burned like the sun. "Leave." He pointed to the air, and the flames around suddenly shot upwards, covering the sky. The word "leave" appeared among the flames. The vortex collided with the sun furnace, causing an incredibly destructive storm to sweep out. The dark green storm tried to swallow up the sun furnace, and the sun furnace was trying to transform the vortex. The two forces intermingled, and terrifying flames of the path wrapped around each other. Duan Wuji and Yi Futian were floating in the air, using their minds to control the flames, and guiding them with their hands. As they watched this ferocious battle, many people thought that if Yi Futian and Duan Wuji's wills were to collide with each other, both of them would be consumed. In that case, Yin Tianjiao and Saint Jiuyo's disciple would probably be able to reap the benefits without having lifted a finger. Many people were a little surprised that Yi Futian's fire of the Great Path could withstand Duan Wuji. As a prince, Duan Wuji had cultivated himself to be very powerful. So, Yi Futian of Emperor Xia's realm's powerful techniques must be at the Renhuang level. The two of them floated among the fire of the Great Path, using their hands to control the flames. They were putting more and more will into it, and endless flames descended from the sky. Each flame was filled with terribly destructive energy. Duan Wuji looked at Yi Futian under the raging flames. Dark green fire wrapped around him, growing stronger and stronger. He had not put all of his power into the vortex yet. He was still saving some. However, lines of flame will appeared around Yi Futian as well. The flames were clear and pure, seeming real one instant then illusory the next. There was something unreal about them. "Go!" Duan Wuji swept out his sleeve, and endless flames of the way swept out. But Yi Futian pointed forward, and 3,000 flames of the way shrieked forward, slamming into his opponent's flames. The two powers shook the sky as they collided. Duan Wuji stepped forward with a mighty stride, and descended right in front of Yi Futian. He reached out, and suddenly, a vortex of flames appeared around Yi Futian, trying to swallow him up. Yi Futian's eyes were frightening. He swept his gaze over Duan Wuji, and pure white flames appeared around him, seeming to have grown out of thin air. They covered Duan Wuji's body. The two of them were nearing each other quickly. Duan Wuji raised his fist and slammed it towards Yi Futian. Immense power appeared around his delicate hand. Yi Futian stretched out a single finger, but it was sharper than a sword. It pierced towards the onrushing fist. The two attacks collided, and a terrible vortex descended upon Yi Futian from Duan Wuji's fist. He seemed unable to control his body, and his aura was sucked out by his opponent's fist. It seemed that his very soul was under attack, and would be sucked out. But Yi Futian's finger contained immense space-tearing power. It was like a halberd. In a flash, endless destructive will entered his opponent's hand and slammed into his body. Duan Wuji's blood surged through his body. He had an uncomprehending look on his face. Terrible flames suddenly appeared on his hand, and it turned dark green as he continued to press it towards Yi Futian. His fist seemed able to engulf Yi Futian along with his very soul. Yi Futian continued to press his finger forward, and flames of the great path shot out of the other fingers. As soon as his finger landed on his opponent's hand, a void was drilled all the way through his hand up into his arm. Both of their attacks threatened their opponent, so after that single touch they broke apart. Yi Futian's sleeve was torn, and dark green light had appeared on his hand. Duan Wuji was the same. His sleeve had been burned away to nothing, and undying flames of the way were raging across his body, sapping his vitality. Duan Wuji tried to retreat, but he felt an intense space-binding power. Yi Futian continued to press his fingers forward, trying to touch Duan Wuji again. Duan Wuji frowned, and coldness flashed in his eyes. Someone was really actively trying to attack him. He slammed out with his fist once again with no hesitation. In a flash, the two of them collided again like two phantoms. Bang! There was the loud sound of a collision, and the two of them separated yet again. Both of them groaned. This attack had obviously been difficult to bear. They had both been struck by their opponent's attack at the same time as they struck their opponent. The threat from the flames of the way was more than they could handle at their level, and its destructive power when it entered their bodies was apparent. Yi Futian's arms and torso were starting to turn faintly green, which looked very strange. Everyone's eyes fell upon him. Could he withstand this anymore? But Yi Futian sat down and crossed his legs as the dark green fire raged across him, swallowing up his vitality, his spirit, and even trying to devour his very breath. His blood roared and roiled as his divine will descended, stamping out the flames. He looked a little better now. When it came to flame power, Duan Wuji was not inferior to him at all, and was even a little bit better. Thus, he did not have the advantage when they collided. But at that moment, Duan Wuji was also sitting cross-legged in the air. Renhuang light seemed to flash around him, snuffing out all other power. White void flames raged within him. They were undying, having an unlimited lifespan. The flames burned until they reached outside his body. His face was ashen. Finally, he groaned and spat out a mouthful of blood. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. The cultivators from the 9 great tribes were all shocked when they saw what was happening. The cultivators from the 9 great tribes were all shocked when they saw what was happening. Prince Duan Wuji had been the first one to be seriously wounded. From his current stance, it was clear that this wound was affecting him greatly, and he was still fighting to control the flames of the way within him. On the other side of the battlefield, Yi Futian swept his gaze around. The divine sun furnace swallowed up everything, and gradually devoured the dark green vortex. Duan Wuji had no time to deal with him, and so the conflict up in the air had come to an end. Duan Wuji has lost. Everyone's hearts trembled. This was an unexpected outcome. If this had just been a regular duel, then even though Lord Yi of Qinya City did not have a brilliant record, he would still have been strong because of Yu Sheng, and he could have been more than a match for Prince Duan Wuji. However, this was a contest of flames. The god-eating flames were famous, and so everyone had thought that Duan Wuji would win here in the ancestral lands. But things had not gone as expected. Yi Futian of Qianya City had defeated Duan Wui in a contest of flames. Even the Zhu tribe and the Wu tribe, who had chosen Yi Futian, had not thought this to be possible. They looked incredibly surprised at that moment. If they had known that he could control flames so well, then everyone would have sent him invitations the moment he had set foot in Emperor Kua's city. Instead, no one had come looking for him, and so the Wu tribe had been able to convince him to go with them for practically no cost. However, many people looked surprised when they thought of the relationship between the Wu tribe and the Zhu tribe. Yin Tianjiao of the Zhu tribe was still there, and Yi Futian, whom the Wu tribe had invited, was still so powerful. It seemed that there was no more suspense about the outcome of this struggle at the ancestral lands. Saint Jiuyo's disciple was strong, but it would be almost impossible for a single cultivator to resist two powerful cultivators like Yin Tianjiao and Yi Futian. Indeed, he would have a great deal of trouble trying to take on just one of them. After all, Yi Futian had already proven his strength in this battle. Thus, if the Wu tribe was willing to concede to the Zhu tribe, then there was no more suspense in this battle. The Zhu tribe would be the victors, and would have the opportunity to put the ancestral lands to use. 8 great tribes had been eliminated from this competition already. The only question was, would the Wu tribe and Yi Futian concede? If they didn't, who was stronger? Yi Futian or Yin Tianjiao? Lord Ye's strength is supernatural. I never would have thought that Prince Duan Wuji would lose to him. It seems that Saint Jiuyo's disciple would similarly have a hard time against him, said the burly, middle-aged man from the Zhu tribe with the long, red beard. Saint Jiuyo's disciple looked at Yi Futian. Yi Futian raised his eyebrows slightly. This cultivator from the Zhu tribe was a bit impolite. Or could it be that he was trying to incite a fight between him and Saint Jiuyo's disciple? Among the people present, he was the one who had fought the most. Although he had beaten Duan Wuji in the fight he had just had, he had used up a lot of his power to do so, and much of the will he had refined had been destroyed. Moreover, Duan Wuji's attacks had injured him. With such fearsome flames entering his body, how could he not have been affected? Saint Jiuyo's disciple was not weak, and his Black Lotus Karma fire contained terrible destructive power. If he fought again after having just fought, then even if he defeated Saint Jiuyo's disciple, he would not be at full power. And at that point, the only 2 cultivators left would be him and Yin Tianjiao. He knew exactly what the cultivator from the Zhu tribe was trying to do. His statement seemed to incite Saint Jiuyo's disciples' will to fight. He stared at Yi Futian, and the Black Lotus Karma fire wrapped around him. He was ready to fight. But at the moment, a figure flashed over and descended upon the battlefield, appearing in front of Saint Jiuyo's disciple. The dazzling figure was none other than Yin Tianjiao. She had not waited for Saint Jiuyo's disciple and Yi Futian to fight, but had actively come to participate. Terrible flames wrapped around her, bathing her in divine fire. Her violent aura swept out, shooting towards Saint Jiuyo's disciple. The cultivator from the Zhu tribe was shocked as he beheld this scene. He was surprised that she would act like this. But then he understood. These people were all proud sons and daughters of heaven. Thus, this Yin Tianjiao was an incredibly proud person, and had seen what he was trying to do. So she had acted, disdaining such means as he was employing. The cultivator from the Zhu tribe smiled coldly. Yin Tianjiao was indeed proud, but the ancestral lands were extremely important to the 9 great tribes. Now that they were within easy reach, how could he easily let them go? He would obviously use any tricks at his disposal. Also, wasting your opponent's energy was not really a petty trick. Yi Futian eyed Yin Tianjiao. What a proud woman! Duan Wuji was still sitting there. He opened his eyes and looked at Yi Futian, saying, "What kind of flames of the way do you have?" The pure white fire had been almost clear and seemed like void flames. This kind of flame seemed as if it could not be extinguished. Even if he tried to use Rahuang will to control them, he would still be burned by them. These are flames that I learned about long ago through my cultivation. But at that time, they were just a prototype, so I never used them. Now when we were refining our flames here in the ruins, I tried to use them again. Now that I've managed to employ them, I call them the fire of white lapis lazuli, answered Yi Futian. These flames have an endless will, said Duan Wuji. Yi Futian nodded slightly. Endless will was indeed contained within those flames, and it would be difficult to extinguish for even the most powerful cultivator. Duan Wuji smiled and said, I never thought I would lose to you in a contest of flames. He was extremely confident in his god-eating fire, since it was so powerful. You are very good at controlling flames, said Yi Futian. He then turned and returned to his position. He had not been exaggerating. He had spoken truly. That god-eating fire had burned within him. It was indeed quite ferocious. Duan Wuji looked at Yi Futian, then turned and left as well. The glory of the Zhong tribe had dimmed a little bit. Only Yi Futian and the Wu tribe cultivator's glory was still shining brightly. On the battlefield, the two cultivators were locked in furious combat. Although Yin Tianjiao had cultivated many powerful flames of the Wei, she seemed to have integrated all of them into her attack spells. She was bursting with power as she launched her attacks. Saint Juyo's disciple's Black Lotus Karma fire was incredibly strong, but it seemed almost insignificant when facing Yin Tianjiao. In the end, Yin Tianjiao defeated Saint Juyo's disciple and made it to the end of the contest. The glory of the Raven tribe dimmed while the Zhu tribe's glory brightened. The light of the sun fell upon the two remaining tribes, the Zhu tribe and the Wu tribe. It also shone high up into the clouds. What was hard for people to accept was that the two remaining cultivators were from the Zhu and Wu tribes. These two tribes were very close and were practically allied. Now they had both made it to the end. Did that not seem a little strange? Would they really fight each other now? Yi Futian was still busy refining his will. He sat with eyes shut cultivating. He seemed to have not seen the conclusion of Yin Tianjiao's battle. The Zhu tribe cultivator's gaze fell upon Yi Futian. Lord Yi, he said, I will have a great gift of thanks for you when we return. Why don't we let this battle end here, all right? He hoped that Yi Futian would give up. Yin Tianjiao was very strong, but if they could win this without a fight, everything would be settled. The fact that Yi Futian was still there made him an unknown factor. If he had been able to defeat Prince Duan Wuji, who could say that he would certainly lose to the princess of Emperor Wu, who had cultivated in the Crimson Dragon realm. End it here. Yi Futian looked at the cultivator of the Zhu tribe. The elder of the Wu tribe placed his trust in me and asked me to fight this battle. I've already come this far. How can I give up? I must give it my all. The Zhu tribe cultivator frowned. He was a bit upset with this reply. The Wu tribe cultivator looked at him, then to Yi Futian, and said, both of them are powerful figures, and so it would be good to watch a battle between the two of them. Why don't we just let them fight? The Zhu tribe cultivator frowned. This man from the Wu tribe seemed to have his own ideas. Was it because Yi Futian's strength had given him confidence, and thus thoughts of total victory had been born in his mind? What are you thinking, Wu Yong? Asked the Zhu tribe cultivator coldly. The other cultivators of the Zhu tribe also swept their gazes over the people from the Wu tribe. Coldness flashed in their eyes. Were they trying to stand up for themselves? Boom! At that moment, a wild flame aura swept out. Yi Futian ignored the Zhu tribe cultivator. He directly unleashed his power as he sped towards Yin Tianjiao. He was prepared to fight. As for the Zhu tribe cultivator's exhortations, how could he obey them? Why had he even come here? Would he give up when he was only a step away? Please enlighten me. Wild flames rolled towards Yin Tianjiao as the great path furnace burned everything. Yin Tianjiao waited for it patiently, staring at Yi Futian. In a flash, a ringing sound came from her, and she blazed as brightly as the sun. Her radiance was frightening. Boom! Her wild aura shot up into the clouds. She seemed like a goddess of war. Divine light shot up into the sky as she gazed at Yi Futian's onrushing figure. Great path-binding power descended. It was spatial will that sought to freeze her in place. But Yin Tianjiao stepped forward with no thought of retreat. She seemed about to trample upon Yi Futian's body. A giant palm print materialized before her and slammed out towards him. The battle had broken out in an instant. There was a dark look on the Zhu tribe cultivator's face. He watched Yi Futian with unkind eyes, but soon, he was watching the whole battle. This battle was extremely important. The idea to have the Wu tribe invite Yi Futian on this trip to the ruins had originally been theirs. When the Wu tribe had seen Yi Futian's strength, they decided to gamble with him. He would watch and see. If Yi Futian was defeated at Yin Tianjiao's hands, how would the Wu clan cultivators deal with him? And even if he won, would the Wu clan cultivators be able to take all of the Zhu clan cultivators? Two figures collided wildly atop of Sun Castle. Two figures collided wildly atop of Sun Castle. Yi Futian was bathed in the sun's fire. He turned into a furnace tripod, and ancient characters surrounded him, refining all his power and integrating it into his body. He let loose a powerful attack. Yin Tianjiao was a princess of Emperor Wu's realm, and was a Renhuang cultivator. It was apparent how powerful she was in combat. She had also inherited Emperor Wu's talent, and her attack spells were overpowering. She integrated the fire of the Great Path into her attacks. At that moment, the fire merged with the martial will exploding from her body. But it was different than it had been with Shichan. Shichan had transformed into the divine body of 9 suns. But that had just been like borrowing the might of the sun. But Yin Tianjiao had transformed into a goddess of war. Burning flames wrapped around her, and she borrowed the might of the entire world. Her every strike, and her every movement was filled with destructive power. At that moment, Yin Tianjiao raised her fist, and pressed it down towards Yi Futian. She was powerful and overwhelming. Her attack, the Nirvana handprint of unblemished flames, covered the sky and shook the very as it slammed towards Yi Futian. The wave of flames swept out, giving off a shrieking sound. Yi Futian activated the deed of thought comprehension, and took the flames into his own body, as he had turned into a great furnace. He also raised his fist and stepped forward with the footwork of Xian Yuan. The air trembled along with the great path. He thrust forward with overlapping Huangting fist wills, and his attack slammed into the palm print that covered the sky. A rumbling noise rang out, and the hand print trembled as cracks appeared in it. It then collapsed. But Yin Tianjiao's attacks did not stop. She continued forward and struck out with both fists at the same time. Her long robe was bathed in flames. She looked majestic and powerful. She slammed out her fists like a martial goddess, and her flaming palm print flattened everything in its path. The two of them slammed together, and a destructive airflow swept out at their terrifying collision. There was a loud bang, and they both retreated. Yi Futian's gaze was fixed on his opponent. He was a little surprised that a woman could attack so powerfully. No wonder she had been able to enter the regional palace to cultivate. He wondered if she had fought with Yu Sheng there. Yin Tianjiao felt her heart quaking. She had not been able to beat Yi Futian, and he was even directly attacking her. This guy was just like that B** starred from the regional palace. He was simply a monster. Moreover, he seemed to have a similar power to her own in that he could integrate the power of flames into his attacks. Either way, this showdown between them was not getting anywhere. She looked at Yi Futian, and her blood boiled. The blood of Renhuang flowed through her veins. The light from an even more powerful flame shot up into the sky. Divine fire seemed to wrap around her as dazzling flame light pulsated. It was like a divine golden fire was burning her body, and making her aura even more powerful. An even wilder aura swept out from her. A look of surprise came over Yi Futian's face. Yin Tianjiao's aura was increasing and becoming stronger. It was as if the flames of the way within her were improving her combat ability. Golden flames shot out of her eyes and pierced towards Yi Futian's. In that instant, Yi Futian felt terrible divine flames burning in his mind that sought to extinguish his spiritual willpower. Whoosh! Yin Tianjiao stepped forward, and the divine flames that wrapped around her body transformed into a fiery war goddess with many arms. The goddess thrust out her fists towards Yi Futian, destroying the very air as they covered him in blows. There was a look of pain in Yi Futian's eyes. He looked up at the oncoming fists, and a terrible fiery airflow swept out from him. At that moment, horrifying divine fire shot out from his eyes. He looked at Yin Tianjiao, and she seemed to see an incomparably huge fiery god of war. The scene was somewhat familiar to her. Intense sunlight fell from the sky. It was as if the sun itself was on fire. The flames fell on Yi Futian's body, making the flames that were already around him become stronger and stronger. All the cultivators from the 9 great tribes were looking at him, and their hearts were trembling. They also seemed to feel a familiar aura. The Runhuang flames of the way, they all said as they watched him. Had this guy refined many Runhuang flames of the way and integrated them into his body for his own use? Yin Tianjiao's flames of the way could also be called Runhuang flames of the way. Her father, Emperor Wu, was Runhuang, and her talent had come from him. But even so, she had only been able to gradually display her power as her cultivation became stronger. No matter what, her flames of the way should have been stronger than the ones that Yi Futian had refined. After all, she had directly inherited them from her father, whereas Yi Futian had obtained them later. However, the aura that burst forth from Yi Futian now was not weaker than hers in the least. In addition, Runhuang Wu burned within it. It was as if he was using the power of these ruins. The intense light of the sun shone down on him. Boom! A wild burst of will swept out as Yi Futian's furnace swallowed up the flames around him. His body became tall and mighty. It was as if Emperor Qua had come down into the world. He raised his fist and grabbed at the air. Huge palm prints slammed into the onrushing fists, shattering them completely. He stepped forward, and the very air trembled. The great path roared as fire shot out of his eyes, colliding with the golden fire that was coming from Yin Tianjiao's. The two colossal powers clashed. Yin Tianjiao's expression changed. She stepped towards Yi Futian. Beneath the flames, she was like a goddess, beautiful beyond compare. Yi Futian stepped forward at the same time, and thrust his fist out. A furnace tripod of the heavenly great path appeared in his hand, formed from the flames of the way. The flames within him poured into it, and then swept out towards Yin Tianjiao. Yin Tianjiao swept her divine golden flames downward, and turned into a divine phoenix. She and many other sacred beasts of flame charged forward. But the divine furnace was growing larger and larger, and it swallowed them all up. The fiery divine beasts shrieked as they were shattered within it. They could not break out. Boom! The fiery divine beasts all melted within the furnace. Yin Tianjiao went pale. The terrifying furnace continued to swallow them all up, and endless divine flames shrieked forward, but they could not destroy it. It was as if the furnace was formed of Runhuang fire, and thus was able to consume all their flame will. The great path had formed this furnace, and it could refine all the flames of heaven and earth. Yi Futian stepped forward, and slapped the furnace through the air towards Yin Tianjiao. It pressed towards her, and she raised both her hands to block it, but it swallowed up the flames that were upon her. She was sent flying back by its continuous pressure, and she spat up a mouthful of blood. Her face was ashen. Yi Futian continued forward with not a hint of regard for her safety. He once again pressed the furnace towards her, continuing his attack on her. She was slammed to the ground. She was finally no longer able to bear it. She lay sprawled on the ground with crimson blood flowing from the corner of her mouth. Yi Futian's figure flashed, and he descended before her. He began to walk towards her. Upon the walls of Sun Castle, the Zhu tribe cultivator's face was held hard as iron. Yin Tianjiao had actually been defeated at Yi Futian's hands. Of all the 9 tribes, it had actually been the Wu tribe's Yi Futian who had made it to the end, and had defeated all opponents. Lord Yi, called the Zhu tribe cultivator. Yi Futian looked at him, then continued forward ignoring him. All the cultivators of the 9 tribes were watching him. They were speechless. The Zhu tribe cultivator could not change this outcome. Yi Futian had no intention of conceding. He walked up to Yin Tianjiao, and cut the flame will from her. Sunlight streamed down from high up in the sky. Upon the walls of Sun Castle, 9 beams of radiance seemed to merge into one. It fell upon Yi Futian. Golden light wrapped around him, and covered the vast area. The will of the great path flowed down along with the sunlight, making Yi Futian's aura stronger and stronger. He seemed to resonate with the sun, and the two of them became one. Not only that, but of the cultivators standing guard on Sun Castle, only those of the Wu tribe's bloodline shone brightly as well. The cultivators from the other 8 tribes dimmed. It seemed as if their auras had been swallowed up by the sun, and given to this one man. Wu Yong turned his gaze towards a figure standing guard upon the castle walls. The sun shone brightly upon him as he strode towards Futian. Do not resist. He will help you open the gate to the ancestral lands, Wu Yong said to Futian. The figure walked towards Futian, then entered directly into his body, seeming to turn into a beam of fire. It seemed as if the cultivators upon the castle walls were not real, but were formed of pure will. Futian's golden light grew brighter and brighter, and the refinement of flames of the way within him sped up. The light of brilliant flames covered Sun Castle. A beam of terrifying light shot forward towards the gate to the ancestral lands. The sun, Futian's body, and the gate to the ancestral lands all shone brightly one after the other. Even under the light of the terrible golden fire, the gate did not budge. Even as it was heated until it became red hot, it still stood firm. Open it, then we can go to the ancestral lands, said Wu Yong from beside Futian. He hoped that Futian could complete this final step and open the gate that led to the ancestral lands. The cultivators of the 9 great tribes all watched Futian. They did not know whether or not he could accomplish this final task and enter the ancestral lands. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. There seemed to be a massive matrix atop Sun Castle. At this point, the sun's fire was not divided into 9 rays, but instead, all of it was falling upon Futian and helping him refine the gate to the ancestral lands. Flames burned beneath the brilliant matrix that was formed from the light of the sun. Everyone around them stepped back due to their terrible power and would not dare to draw any nearer. The cultivators of the 9 great tribes and the 8 other people that they had invited with them were all staring at Futian and the gate. The cultivators from the Wu clan were watching closely, especially Wu Yong. His heart was pounding fast. Wu Yong may have invited Futian twice, but in reality, he would have never thought that the Lord of Qinya City could refine the flames of the way and defeat all his opponents, especially Yin Tianjiao, the daughter of Emperor Wu, and Duan Wuji. But now he had succeeded. He naturally hoped that Futian would go even further and open up the gate to the ancestral lands, letting them set foot there. Over the years, any tribe that managed to enter the ancestral lands became much stronger, and their power would increase by leaps and bounds. They naturally did not want to miss their chance. The reason that the Wu tribe had attached themselves to the Zhu tribe was both tribes' power was gradually increasing. When facing external threats, the 9 tribes acted as one, but they would also struggle and compete against each other. Each of the 9 tribes was ambitious. They each wanted to unify the 9 tribes and become their leader. However, without entering the Renhuang Plain, it would be challenging to make the other 8 tribes listen to orders and obey them. But even if they could not unify the 9 tribes, they would still increase their power by entering the ancestral lands. Wu Yong would no longer need to look at that Zhu tribe cultivator's face, nor listen to his orders. As he thought of this, Wu Yong watched closely. He hoped Futian could do it. Duan Wuji and Yin Tianjiao were watching Futian as well. They had all heard of the ruins of Emperor Kwa. It was said that every time they were open, people would go there to undergo trials. Part of the reason was so that they could become stronger. For people who refined flames of the way, the path of refining did not allow you to advance to the next level directly. They must first deepen their understanding of flames. But more importantly, it was rumored that Emperor Kwa had left something behind in the ruins. Those who went to the ancestral lands would have a chance to find and inherit it. Of course, very few people had been able to go there in the past. No one had ever heard of anyone finding whatever it was that Emperor Kwa had left behind. Thus people still came here. But none of them expected that they would not be able to pass through the gate, as Futian overtook them. Now they could only be observers. Both Duan Wuji and Yin Tianjiao thought that given Futian's talent, he had a chance of opening the gate. After all, they thought of themselves as quite outstanding, and Futian had beaten them using flames, so they naturally had to admit the extent of his power. At that moment, there was a divine matrix formed of sunlight in front of Sun Castle. The sunlight helped Futian refine the flames, and his aura began to rise wildly, becoming extremely strong. It seemed to be helping him reach the peak of the divine path and refine all the flames that he had seized from his opponents. It was not only the matrix that was helping him. The figure that had entered into his body previously had turned into a brilliant flame of the way and was assisting him as well. At that moment, Futian had reached the extreme limits of his power. He could even fight with someone at the nirvana level. Of course, most of it was power that came from outside him, and it was just there to help him open the gate. The sun's flames shot towards the gate to the ancestral lands and covered it. However, the gate did not budge. It stood there firmly, and the flames of the great path could not melt it. Futian wildly refined the will within him. He could even feel that the figure that had entered him was at the nirvana level, and was refining fire as well. At that moment, he felt that he was at the absolute center of all the fire of the great path in the area. He was drawing in all the power of heaven and earth to try and melt the gate. But he was still unable to do it. Time passed slowly, and Futian still sat in the center of the matrix, bathed in the sun's divine fire. He did not stop for a moment. No one tried to hurry him up. The cultivators of the 9 tribes stood there watching. All of them were at the saint level, and thus were very patient. At this point, there was no need to be hasty. The cultivators who had been defeated in battle did not leave either. They stood there watching as well. Several days passed in what seemed like the blink of an eye. However, nothing changed. The flames within Futian's body became stronger. But the gate was not affected in the slightest. It seemed to be an eternal gate that would never open. Futian's eyes were shut tight. He was thinking about what the problem could be. He had taken all the flames from the matrix. If that were enough to open the gate, it would have done so by now. But the gate had not opened. So where was the problem coming from? Emperor Qua's flames of the way. When Futian thought of this, lines of fire entered the furnace that his body had formed and into his will. In his mind, a fiery god of war stood between heaven and earth, devouring all the flames. Futian's will moved, drawing upon the power of the matrix, and began to refine Emperor Qua's flames of the way. Time continued to pass. When one reached the saint level, cultivation could take a long time. Futian refined for 10 days without realizing it. Some of the people there thought about leaving, but stayed anyway, sitting there cross-legged as they cultivated. The cultivators of the 9 tribes were used to this. They were aware of what the gate to the ancestral land was like. It was not easy to open. Even within the 9 tribes, no one could open it. That was why they came here all the time, and relied on the power of outsiders to open it. That showed how difficult it was. Futian's perception of the will was getting stronger and stronger. He had already refined quite a bit. In his perception, he seemed to have transformed into a fiery god of war. A figure was coalescing in the furnace of the great path, and was gradually growing larger. This figure looked like Futian, but it was just an illusion formed of the fire of the great path. Its body grew bigger and bigger, and swallowed up all the fire in the area. Up in the sky, the sunlight grew stronger and changed even more than it had before. It seemed as if the sun's fire would flow along the bridge of heaven and earth to the fiery god of war. Time passed, and the flames burned in the sky. Above the figure that had been formed from will, the firelight reached the sky and merged into the world itself. A powerful burst of will shot through the world. Gradually, Futian became able to perceive the whole ruins. After some time, everything in his perception changed. He seemed to see an incomparably immense figure. It was just like when he had just come to the ruins, but it had become much clearer. There was a huge face in the sky, and the brilliant sun seemed to be its eye. The crimson clouds were its hair, and the vast ruins seemed to be its body, and the fiery magma was its blood. It seemed as if these ruins had been integrated into a god. Or rather, these ruins were, in fact, a god. Is that Emperor Qua? Futian wondered this. Heaven and earth seemed to change colors as the whole ruins were dyed red. The sun matrix's power reached its limits, and the figure of the god of war, that was formed from flames, seemed like it would swallow up the whole sun. There was endless fire everywhere, and it all turned into nourishment for the figure. Rays of divine light shot towards the gate, and finally slammed against it with loud bangs. The gate gradually began to change. It looked like it was melting. The entire gate gradually became transparent. It's opened. The Wu tribe cultivator's eyes were bright. Yi Futian had done it. He had opened the gate to the ancestral lands. Wu Yong clenched his fists. Although he was an unblemished saint, he was still obviously very excited by this. He had not expected this stroke of luck, that he had invited someone able to open the gate to the ancestral lands. He looked up into the crimson sky and felt his heart pounding. The Wu tribe would finally have a chance to enter the ancestral lands. Lord Yi, the gate to the ancestral lands is open. Please let us, the members of the Wu clan, enter. You may enter as well, but do not let anyone else, Wu Yong said to Yi Futian. Very well, answered Yi Futian. Wu Yong looked around at everyone else and saw a powerful figure standing next to him. It was the elder of the Wu tribe. He looked at the other tribes and said, "This time, it is the Wu tribe who will enter the ancestral lands." On saying this, the whole tribe started forward. The other 8 tribes did not move. This was the agreement that the 9 tribes had had for many years, and they would continue to follow it. Moreover, right now, Yi Futian was controlling the gate to the ancestral lands with help from the Matrix. At this point, it could be said that Yi Futian was at the extreme limit of his power, and could even kill someone who had reached nirvana. He was the one whom the Wu tribe had invited, and thus the Wu tribe had earned the right to enter the ancestral lands. Open. Yi Futian opened his eyes, and terrifying light flashed in them. A fiery hole appeared in the gate to the ancestral lands. The Wu tribe walked forward, entered within it. Once they had all entered, Yi Futian flashed over there, and transformed into a beam of fiery light that shot inside. In the next moment, the matrix at Sun Castle disappeared. Everything returned to the way it was before. The gate to the ancestral lands solidified once again. It was closed. Everything was calm once again. The Zhu tribe cultivator had an icy look on his face. Be *starred, spat the burly figure. The Wu tribe had betrayed them. If the Wu tribe had obeyed their orders, then the one to open the gate to the ancestral lands would have been Yin Tianjiao. Should we leave, or should we wait? Asked Duan Wuji. His voice was calm. There was no joy or sorrow in it. It was as if this was all perfectly ordinary. We will stay here. You can all leave if you want to, said the Zhong tribe cultivator. Is it all right if we stay and cultivate here for a while? Asked Yin Tianjiao. The Zhu tribe cultivator nodded. Of course. Duan Wuji looked at Yin Tianjiao, then smiled. He had had no intention of leaving, so he stayed as well. The gate to the ancestral lands had opened. None of them knew what would happen there. After Yi Futian and the others entered, they looked forward and saw a stairway off in the distance that went up into the sky. The end of the staircase seemed to be the place where the sun rested, the highest point of Sun Castle. The Wu clan cultivators waited for Yi Futian up ahead. The elder watched Yi Futian walking over. Many thoughts were racing through his mind. At this point, Yi Futian no longer had the blessing of the Matrix, but an incredible aura still flowed over him. What had he just gained? After opening the gate to the ancestral lands, would he be the only one who had the chance to get whatever it was the Emperor Kwa had left behind? Yi Futian felt the elder's eyes on him, but kept his own eyes forward. He looked extremely calm, but he felt a keen sense of determination. This whole scene made his heart tremble slightly, and gave rise to a sense of vigilance within him. This elder of the Wu clan had never spoken to him. Could it be that he had some ideas of his own? For him to pull down the bridge after crossing the river would be nothing new. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Have you gained anything from this, Lord Yi? The Wu tribe elder asked Yi Futian. There was a faint smile on his face, and it did not look like he had any ulterior motives. Have you gained anything from this, Lord Yi? The Wu tribe elder asked Yi Futian. There was a faint smile on his face, and it did not look like he had any ulterior motives. I have been able to refine a lot of will, and have felt Emperor Kwa's majesty. I have benefited a lot, said Yi Futian with a slight smile. The Wu tribe elder nodded with a smile. Thank you for allowing us to come here to the ancestral lands. Without you, we would have never had this chance. No need to be so polite, elder, replied Yi Futian with a smile. As far as I am concerned, I have also gained a lot from this. So I must also thank you for inviting me. The Wu tribe elder smiled at that, then looked ahead. At that moment, Wu Yong was coming over. Elder Lord Yi, he said. Let's go up and take a look. All right. Something flashed across the Wu tribe elder's face as he looked forward. No one could tell what he was thinking. Yi Futian walked forward up the stairway, going higher and higher. It looked like he was walking right into the sun. Lord Yi, did you learn anything about what we might find in the ancestral lands from the Matrix? Asked the Wu tribe elder as he stared up the stairs. My perception has covered the entire area, but other than at the very top, I can't find anything. I did, said Yi Futian with a nod. A sharp look flashed in the Wu tribe elder's eyes, but when he turned to look at Yi Futian, his gaze returned to normal. His eyes were warm and calm. Was it the thing that Emperor Kwa left behind? He asked. Yi Futian shook his head and said, it was a marvelous feeling. Previously, the power of the Matrix poured into my body, and I felt that my body could resonate with the ancestral lands themselves. I feel that a secret way of opening up the ancestral lands can be found at the top. Let's go and see. The Wu tribe elder looked at Yi Futian, then nodded and said, very well. Since you were able to come here, Lord Yi, you must also be able to unlock the secrets of the ancestral lands. I will wait here and see. The Wu tribe thanks you deeply. If you ever need anything in the future, you only have to ask us. Thank you, elder, said Yi Futian with a smile. A group of them continued forward. You were able to overcome all those heroes, said Wu Yong to Yi Futian. Your future is definitely bright. Unfortunately, the 9 great tribes of Emperor Kwa have no one left within them who is as powerful as you are. Otherwise, given your accomplishments with the flames of the way, we might truly have a chance to truly become Emperor Kwa's heirs. You are too kind, elder, said Yi Futian with a smile. They continued forward. They eventually came to the top of the stairway. A blazing wool descended upon them. The sun was directly overhead, and seemed to be very close to them. This was clearly not the sun of the Crimson Dragon realm, but instead was the sun of the ancestral lands. Look over there. Wu Yong looked at the place directly below the sun. There seemed to be a magical matrix pattern there. I will go and look. Perhaps we will find the secret of the ancestral lands there, said Yi Futian. He flashed over there, and descended within the matrix. He sat down cross-legged within it. Sunlight fell from the sky, and he was instantly swallowed up by it. Divine light was shining all over him. His body was bathed in endless flames. The great path drew upon the power of heaven and earth. The matrix lit up bit by bit, until it was incredibly bright. In a flash, Yi Futian's whole body was covered by the incomparably bright light from the matrix. Radiance continued to fall from the sun. At that moment, many thoughts were running through Yi Futian's mind. How is it going, Lord Yi? Called the Wu tribe elder. Yi Futian kept his eyes closed, and seemed not to hear what he said. Lord Yi. The Wu tribe elder's voice grew much louder, shaking Yi Futian's eardrums. Yi Futian opened his eyes, and the Wu tribe elder asked, how is it going? There is an inheritance here, left by Emperor Kwa. Please do not disturb me for a while, and let me perceive this area in peace, Yi Futian said to the Wu tribe elder. The Wu tribe elder's pupils dilated, and his gaze became extremely sharp. There was an inheritance here that Emperor Kwa had left behind? As he watched Yi Futian, a thought appeared in his mind. Why should this inheritance not go to him and his tribe, rather than to an outsider? After all, Yi Futian was just a guest that they had invited to help them fight, not a true cultivator of the 9 tribes. Moreover, he had just claimed that he had felt the thing that Emperor Kwa had left behind. This was undoubtedly very exciting, especially to the elder of the Wu tribe. It was indeed a very great temptation. As he thought of this, the Wu tribe elder walked towards Yi Futian and said, Lord Yi, can I feel it with you? Yi Futian nodded. Very well. As you please, elder. The elder of the Wu tribe walked into the matrix, and could suddenly clearly sense the power of this will. It seemed that Emperor Kwa had indeed left his flames of the way in the sun, and they were falling here continuously. The Wu tribe elder stood amid the flames of the way. Lines of wool were falling on him, and piercing directly into his mind. Divine light covered his body. This was an incredibly mystical experience. It was like he was touching the inheritance of the great path. But Yi Futian was at the center of the matrix, and so the wool falling towards the Wu tribe elder was clearly a bit less. He turned his eyes towards Yi Futian, and his gaze became very sharp. He was thinking that whenever one of the 9 tribes went to the ancestral lands, their power increased greatly when they returned. Could it be that they had personally felt the will that Emperor Kwa had left behind here? It was highly possible. Yi Futian and the others who had previously come to the ancestral lands were all outsiders after all. They had only come to help. If there was something useful here, they should naturally give it up to the members of the tribe. Moreover, if there really was a secret in the ancestral lands, was it necessary to abandon future opportunities for the 9 tribes by letting outsiders uncover them? The 9 tribes had fought for many years, but no matter what, they were all of the same bloodline. Thinking of this, he said, "Can I sit where you are sitting, Lord Yi, so that I might better feel it?" Yi Futian looked up at him. The Wu tribe cultivators were all stunned as they watched their elder. Wu Yang's expression changed. The elder had his own ideas. He wanted to take the inheritance for his own, rather than letting Yi Futian have it. And why shouldn't he? This was the ancestral land of the 9 tribes after all. And this was what had been left behind by Emperor Kwa. Emperor Kwa must have created these ancestral lands. He naturally understood why the elder wanted to be the one to obtain the inheritance. It was just that in doing so, they would be betraying Yi Futian. "Elder, let Lord Yi cultivate for a bit. These are the ancestral lands after all, and Lord Yi was the one who opened them," called Wu Yong. He had invited Yi Futian to help the Wu tribe. It was not his wish to betray him. Moreover, Yi Futian was an outstanding talent and had an extraordinary background. Maintaining good relations with him was the best choice. If they betrayed him, it would bring them trouble later. After all, Yi Futian had unlimited potential. Unless, Wu Yong's heart raced. He looked at the elder, and his expression changed again. Could it be that the elder had murderous intentions? Did he want to cut out the problem at its root? Yi Futian had unlimited potential, but right now he was very weak. If they killed him now, it would undoubtedly offend Emperor Xia's realm. But outsider emperors could not come to the Crimson Dragon realm and unleash their power. As for the Nirvana-level cultivators in Emperor Xia's realm, if they dared to send an army against them, they would have to face the 9 tribes. Their battle array was not far inferior to that of Emperor Xia's realm. If Emperor Xia wanted to defeat them, how much power would he have to expend? Moreover, the elder probably thought that if he took the inheritance, then his own power and right to speak among the 9 tribes would grow as well. Wu Yong's guess was correct. At that moment, the Wu tribe elder had murderous intent within his heart. The talent that Yi Futian had displayed made him think that rather than form a bad relationship with him, it would be better to cut him down now, ending the matter forever. As a figure at the Nirvana level, his will was firm, but he also pursued his goals with a ruthless heart. Yi Futian looked at Wu Yong. He was a little surprised by the elder's request. He saw him walking towards as if he had not heard Wu Yong, and he said to Yi Futian, "What do you think, Lord Yi?" Yi Futian swept his gaze over him, and the light of the matrix became even more brilliant. Divine fire fell from the sun. In a flash, it was like the flames of the apocalypse were descending. Boom! Suddenly, a look of shock came over the Wu tribe elder's face. He was sent flying back as the descending flames slammed into him. His body began to burn. The matrix around him filled the air. Everything was flames. Yi Futian. The Wu tribe elder swept his gaze over Yi Futian. Could he control the fire of the sun? A pair of eyes seemed to appear in the shifting clouds, looking like 2 great suns. They were vast beyond compare, like the eyes of Emperor Kwa. They looked at the Wu tribe elder. He felt that his body was burning up, and that he had no control over it. He retreated with a horrified expression on his face. A booming sound rang out as flames covered everything. It was a devastating divine fire that could destroy everything. You tricked me. The Wu tribe elder gave a pitiful cry as his body burned up. From the beginning, I've only let you see what I wanted you to see, said Yi Futian coldly. Even the inheritance was like this. We came here, but I am the master of this place. The Wu tribe cultivator shot into the sky, trying to escape, but his arms burned away into nothing. A look of absolute terror came into his eyes. When he looked up in the sky, he could only see a horrifying imperial face. Please spare me, Lord Yi, he cried. Kill him, Yi Futian spat in a cold, emotionless voice. The fire of the great path continued to fall. The Wu tribe elder's aura swept out at maximum power, but it was no use. His body burned away to nothing under the fire of Renhuang. The Wu tribe cultivators all looked shocked. They trembled as they beheld this scene, with hearts beating wildly. They were shaken by how fast it had all happened. Yi Futian swept an indifferent glance across the disappearing figure. There was no emotion in his eyes. A nirvana-level cultivator had tried to deceive him, but he had only managed to reveal his ambitions and be destroyed. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Yi Futian was still sitting there cross-legged. He had not moved at all, but the elder of the Wu tribe, a nirvana-level cultivator, had disappeared. Yi Futian was still sitting there cross-legged. He had not moved at all, but the elder of the Wu tribe, a nirvana-level cultivator, had disappeared. The sun was high in the air. Yi Futian's head. A huge face had appeared in the sky, and as the cultivators of the Wu tribe looked at it, they felt their hearts tremble. It was the face of Emperor Qua. Emperor Qua had rebuilt the ancestral lands. This part of the ancestral lands had been left behind for the 9 great tribes to use. If they could obtain it, it would be a great advantage for them. The thing was, few in the 9 great tribes had been able to pass Emperor Qua's test and open the gate to the ancestral lands. This was why they found themselves in the situation they were in now. Yi Futian had come to claim the inheritance, and the elder of the Wu tribe had gotten greedy. At that moment, conflicted expressions were playing across the faces of the Wu tribe cultivators. They were all top figures within their tribe. The elder had had his reasons for what he had done, but from Yi Futian's point of view, the elder had tried to kill him, and so he had naturally had to eliminate the threat. They had not wanted their cooperation with Yi Futian to end up like this. Them being able to open the gate to the ancestral lands was really a happy accident. They would have a chance to revive the Wu tribe, but greed was inherent to human beings, and so now they wanted more. This had made it so that at this moment, their very lives were in Yi Futian's hands, not to mention the revival of their tribe. It could be that Yi Futian would wipe them all out with one fell swoop at the slightest provocation. At that moment, Yi Futian was watching the cultivators of the Wu tribe. There was a great sense of tension throughout the whole area. A voice suddenly rang out. The elder of the Wu tribe acted impulsively and was killed by Renhuang's flames of the way when he tried to claim the inheritance. Yi Futian turned and looked at the one who had spoken. It was Wu Yong. Wu Yong clasped his hands and bowed to Yi Futian, saying, Lord Yi, you opened the gate to the ancestral lands, making you Emperor Qua's heir. We in the Wu tribe will always be your friends. The other cultivators of the Wu tribe all looked at Wu Yong. Those of the 9 great tribes who came to the ruins were all top figures. Even if they were not elders, they had still cultivated for a long time and had become very strong. But there were very few of them. They naturally understood that Wu Yong was trying to avoid a threatening situation for the Wu tribe. The elder had tried to do away with Yi Futian, which had led to this awful situation. What would Yi Futian do? Yi Futian had just slain their elder very decisively. If he could kill one of them that easily, he could do the same to 10 of them. After we leave, we will summon the 9 great tribes and announce that the elder was consumed by Renhuang's flames of the way, due to his impulsive actions, chimed in another cultivator beside him. His desire to survive this was quite strong. Lord Yi, I understand why you just did what you did. You had no choice but to do it. Everyone here is an elder of the tribe, and none of us are in the elder's direct bloodline. As an elder of the tribe, I can control the rest of them, Wu Yong said to Yi Futian. So please do not worry, Lord Yi. Yi Futian looked at Wu Yong. His eyes were filled with the light of divine fire. Boom! High up in the sky, the fire of the sun descended, and a giant phantom appeared. It seemed to be the image of Emperor Kwa. He merged into the sun, and flames fell to the ground from him. In a flash, Wu Yong was covered. The cultivators of the Wu tribe were all stunned. Wu Yong's expression also changed slightly. He looked up at Yi Futian and cried, Lord Yi. Wu Yong's voice resonated throughout the area as he stared at Yi Futian. He seemed to have shown his attitude and disposition. He did not try to escape. The light of the terrible flames covered Wu Yong's body. The Wu tribe cultivators' hearts beat wildly. However, Wu Yong was still standing there. He did not move. The terrible scene that they had been imagining did not occur. Wu Yong's body was not burned, and the flames of the Wei entered into him. Wu was flowing down from the figure of Emperor Kwa up in the sky, and going into Wu Yong's mind. At that moment, Wu Yong felt that he had received a great gift from the Great Path, one that had been imparted by Emperor Kwa. If the elder of the Wu tribe had not acted against me earlier, then I would have given the inheritance of the ancestral lands to him. After all, these are the 9 great tribes' ancestral lands, said Yi Futian indifferently. The cultivators of the Wu tribe felt like they were in a dream. They breathed a sigh of relief, but their expressions were still conflicted. Yi Futian had been the one to open the gate to the ancestral lands, and was the one who had the right to receive Emperor Kwa's inheritance. He could give it to whoever he wanted. That was how those few tribes that had come here before had been able to become so powerful. The elder had died for nothing. He died because of his greed. If he had not had that off an idea, Yi Futian would have helped him. But since Yi Futian had guessed what he was thinking, that he was purposely plotting against him, it had led to his fall. A Nirvana-level cultivator had died for nothing. They all sighed inwardly. It was truly tragic. Previously, you all saw that this was not what I wished. I grant what Emperor Kwa left behind to Senior Wu Yong. If he wishes to give it to someone else after this, that is his affair. From now on, Wu Yong should be in charge of the Wu tribe, Yi Futian said to everyone. Wu Yong was an elder of the Wu tribe, and now the inheritance had been passed on to him. Now he would be able to lead the Wu tribe even better. Wu Yong was stunned when he heard what Yi Futian said, but the one beside him said, he is worthy of bearing the position of elder. The others all said the same thing one by one. Wu Yong nodded, not shirking his responsibility. This must have been fated to happen. The brilliant light of the flames flowed through Wu Yong's mind, but it stopped after a while. When Wu Yong opened his eyes, fire seemed to flash in them. He bowed to Yi Futian and said, Thank you, Lord Yi. You should go and cultivate, elder, said Yi Futian, already calling him elder. Very well. Wu Yong nodded, then turned and walked to the front of the gathered Wu tribe cultivators. We will go somewhere else to cultivate, he said. Yes, elder. Everyone followed Wu Yong away. They walked down the stairs. They took care not to disturb Yi Futian. Yi Futian glanced at them. How much of the inheritance Wu Yong was willing to pass on was his own business. He closed his eyes and began to sense the great path. At that moment, there was only one man left atop Sun Castle. He sat with legs crossed beneath the sun. High up in the sky, there was also a massive figure. This scene could be seen from far away. It was incredibly astonishing. Endless will flowed down, descending upon Yi Futian's body. Besides the law power that Emperor Kwa had given him, the scene that he beheld was growing clearer and clearer. It was the figure of Emperor Kwa. It seemed that these ruins had turned into him. His perception spread out throughout the ruins, expanding the range he could sense. As he stretched out his perception, the fire flowed towards him. Could it be that there was something else hidden here besides Emperor Kwa's inheritance? It was that previously no one had been able to find it. Otherwise, nothing would have happened. He sat there calmly perceiving, letting his thoughts spread out. Time passed slowly. The Wu tribe cultivators were cultivating at the foot of the stairway. Wu Yong's aura was the strongest. Some of the others looked up at Yi Futian and saw that the sun was growing redder and redder. Crimson clouds streamed through the sky. They wondered if Yi Futian would be able to find whatever it was that Emperor Kwa had left behind besides his inheritance. Could he find the secret of the ancestral lands? Or maybe the 9 great tribes had been wrong all these years, and there was no secret of the ancestral lands at all. Maybe Emperor Kwa had only left his inheritance here, and waited for people to come and claim it. They did not know if this trip would end up being a blessing or a curse. Whoosh! A powerful aura exploded from Wu Yong, and divine light covered his body. Strange light shot up into the clouds. The cultivators of the Wu tribe looked on in fascination. Wu Yong's aura was already at the level of an unblemished saint. Perhaps he would have the chance to reach the nirvana level before long. Outside the gate to the ancestral lands, no one had left yet. They were still waiting there. No one knew what was going on inside. They could only imagine. However, they could all faintly feel the flame will all around them, flowing towards the gate to the ancestral lands. A long time passed. Yi Futian was still cultivating at the top of Sun Castle. His thoughts seemed to cover all of the ruins. These ruins formed the figure of Emperor Kwa. He could faintly feel a strange aura in the sun at the peak of the ruins. Up in the sky, there was an incomparably brilliant sphere among the sun's flames, which was slowly rotating. There was a powerful aura within it. Rays of light shone out from within it, and stretched out into the distance. They covered the whole ruins. What is this? A thought flashed in Yi Futian's mind. His will and his perception floated towards it, trying to enter in. But once they got close, it turned into nothingness. There was no way to touch the depths of the sun. The terrifying thought surged wildly. It melded into Emperor Kwa's will, broke its shackles, and continued to penetrate the core of the sun. Yi Futian saw flames bursting from the brilliant sphere within the sun. They shot out all over the ruins. It seemed that the source of the fire of the Great Path was here. At that moment, Yi Futian's life spirit, the world tree, began to sway. He felt something. It made his heart tremble. This had also happened when he had run into Feishue. Could this be a treasure like the one that resided within Feishue? There was a rustling sound in his life palace, as he thought of the way that he had helped Feishue. The world tree began to spread outward. At that moment, he put the will of the emperor into his life spirit, making incomparably brilliant light shoot out of the world tree. It was like the world tree had its own sun, as it stretched out towards the actual sun. A powerful sense of burning spread out, and the will of the emperor, that had been melded into the world tree, began to burn. But the leaves and branches of the world tree grew even more brilliant as they were bathed in flames, and they began to swallow up all of the fire, even the flames from the radiant sphere within the sun. At that moment, everything suddenly changed. A terrifying vortex instantly appeared inside the sun, and the endless flames around him shot towards it. What is going on? Everyone at the base of the stairs looked up, and saw the clouds fluctuating up in the sky. All the flames were flowing wildly towards the same spot. They were flowing towards the brilliant sun on top of Sun Castle. At that moment, it had turned into a black hole sun, and was swallowing up everything. After only a moment, the whole world went dark. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Everyone looked at the scene before them in shock. Even the unblemished saints among them had never seen something as shocking as this. Everyone looked at the scene before them in shock. Even the unblemished saints among them had never seen something as shocking as this. The sun hung high above Sun Castle, and had turned into a black hole that was swallowing up all the flame power in the ancestral lands. It even seemed like their own flame will powers were being pulled out of them and sucked into it. Wu Yong, who had been cultivating, opened his eyes and looked up at the scene taking place in the distance. His robes fluttered in the wind as he was bathed in endless flame. His eyes that were full of flame will power did not seem disturbed in the least. Had he succeeded? Over the years, many had been able to enter the ancestral lands, but no one had ever really uncovered the secret therein. However, could it be that this time Yi Futian of Qinya City, who they had brought with them, had been able to do it? Solar wind blew by him incomparably hot. Many thoughts raced through Wu Yong's mind, This trip to the ancestral lands had been full of twists and turns. Yi Futian, whom everyone had overlooked, had crushed the other 8 cultivators and entered the ancestral lands, surprising everyone. But afterward, the elder had wanted to take the inheritance for himself, and so had tried to kill Yi Futian, but had been killed himself. Afterward, Wu Yong himself had been made the new elder, and had been granted the inheritance. Now they were going to uncover the secret of the ancestral lands. It was said that Yi Futian had come from Emperor Xia's city. The 9 great tribes were all on the same side. They had once followed Emperor Qua, and even though Emperor Qua had fallen, they still dominated the western portion of the Crimson Dragon realm. But there were so many heroic figures in the wide world. Who would have thought that Yi Futian of Qinya City would defeat all his opponents, and even slay a Nirvana-level cultivator? Even though he had cultivated up to such a high level, Wu Yong still had to be in awe of Yi Futian. If he had been in the middle of that solar wind, he would be swallowed up easily. The world grew darker. The black hole seemed bottomless as it violently swallowed up the sun. Yi Futian was sitting there cross-legged. He seemed to have entered into the sun as well. It was a shocking scene. At that moment, all of his thoughts were focused on a bead of flame spirit. Up to that point, he had known what it was, but now he was sure that it was similar to what had been within Feishue. It contained truly frightening power. Moreover, his life spirit was resonating with it. He did not know who had granted this life spirit. Endless leaves and branches sprouted from Yi Futian as he sat in the sun, covering everything. They stretched out to the center of the sun and entered into its spiritual will. They were continuously destroyed and reborn. They inexorably stretched towards the bead of flame spirit and seemed to be devouring the power within it bit by bit. They seemed to be automatically refining it. However, that thing that seemed like a bead of spirit was devouring all the flames in the area at the same time. Even the will that he had already refined was being sucked in. He could not stop it. He could only feel himself sitting inside the sun, but his world tree life spirit was rolling the bead of flame spirit towards him, bit by bit. Yi Futian's heart was beating wildly. It seemed that all the fire in the world was being sucked in. It looked like he was the black hole. But Yi Futian understood that this was not something that he could do with his power. What was more frightening was that he could sense the image of Emperor Qua being swallowed up by the sun as well. At that moment, the figure became extremely clear. It was as if it was formed out of Emperor Qua's actual will. But at the same time, it was being swallowed up by the terrible vortex bit by bit. In the outside world, everything was becoming darker and darker, until there was almost no light. All the light was being swallowed up by the black hole. The cultivators of the Wu tribe stood there, not moving, letting the wind blow by them and rustled their clothing, which made a rustling sound. The wind was burning hot. "Wu Yong!" came a voice from the darkness. Wu Yong's eyes were like flames. He looked into the darkness. It was like looking into an eclipse. "I'm here," answered Wu Yong. He could naturally tell that the voice had come from Yi Futian in the heart of the storm. "Catch!" came Yi Futian's voice again. Brilliant light appeared in the sky. Wu Yong could faintly see a figure standing up there. It looked like the figure of Emperor Qua. The figure rushed into his body like a beam of light. Terrible flames of the way burned across his body, like the fire of the gods. It was so dazzling that he had to shut his eyes. He let the flames burn across him. He felt like his body would burn away to nothing. His aura seemed to be gradually weakening, as if he was being reduced to an ordinary person. It seemed that he would be burned to death by the fire of the Great Path. But at the moment when he reached his weakest point, a more powerful flame flared up. Lighting went up the sky. Brilliant flames shot up from Wu Yong's body through the darkness, reaching the clouds. His eyes became even more dazzling as they turned into flames. Nirvana! Behind him, the cultivators of the Wu tribe's hearts trembled as they beheld this scene. Now that the elder of the Wu tribe had fallen, Wu Yong was inheriting his position. Had Yi Futian killed one Nirvana-level cultivator and granted the power of Nirvana to another? Of course, this was not done solely by Yi Futian's power. Wu Yong's level was very close to that of Nirvana already, and now both his will and his mind were being washed clean, allowing him to break through to the next level, and become a Nirvana-level saint, the final step on the divine path. "Thank you, Lord Yi," said Wuyong clearly. His Nirvana aura swept out, no weaker than the one that had slain the Wu tribe elder. He looked up towards Yi Futian and saw a powerful beam of light that stung his eyes. None of them could see anything. In the next moment, the world became dark, and Sun Castle disappeared completely. However, after this moment, there was another powerful beam of light that descended from the sun. Everyone opened their eyes and looked around them. It seemed that they could not believe their eyes. Sun Castle had disappeared, and the sun that hung high in the sky was no longer the sun of Sun Castle, but the sun of the Crimson Dragon realm. The wind blew, still a little bit hot, but nothing like it had been earlier. They knew that Sun Castle had disappeared. And not only Sun Castle. All of the ruins of the ancestral lands had disappeared as if they had never existed. Everything that had just happened seemed like a dream. Up ahead, a figure was walking towards them. The cultivators looked at him, and a look of shock came over their faces. Yi Futian seemed to have changed, but they could not quite tell how. Everything looked the same. It was impossible to imagine that the man who had just devoured a son was the white-haired youth before them. "Lord Yi," called Wuyong. He and the other Wu tribe cultivators were looking at Yi Futian completely differently from before. Their visit had deeply moved them to the ruins. "Congratulations on breaking through to the Nirvana level, Elder," said Yi Futian with a smile. Wuyong shook his head and was about to say something, but he seemed to feel something, and so he did not open his mouth. Instead, he turned and looked off into the distance, and a group of figures coming towards them through the sky. They were the cultivators of the 9 tribes, and the 8 cultivators that Yi Futian had defeated. All the cultivators from the 9 tribes were watching them keenly. They swept their gazes over Yi Futian and the rest of them. The cultivator from the Zhu tribe was the first to speak. "What happened, Wuyong?" None of them were calm at that point. The ancestral lands had disappeared. What had happened after they had opened the gate? "We are not sure," answered Wuyong directly. "You don't know?" The Zhong tribe cultivator frowned. Wuyong had stepped into the ancestral lands, and he said he did not know what had happened there. Yin Tianjiao and Duan Wuji were looking at Yi Futian. Could it be that this guy had found whatever it was that Emperor Qua had left behind in the ancestral lands? And they were not the only ones wondering this. The others were looking at Yi Futian as well, including the cultivators from the other 8 tribes. Yi Futian was the one who had opened the gate to the ancestral lands. If not him, then who? The cultivator from the Zhu tribe seemed to notice something, and so he suddenly asked, "Where is your elder?" The others all noticed as well. The Wu tribe was missing a member, and that member was their elder. He seemed to have vanished into thin air. Off in the distance, there was the sound of more people flying. More cultivators flashed over. It was the crowd of people who had been waiting outside for several months. The people of the 8 other tribes, and the cultivators of other forces all descended. Xiaqing Yuan and Shen Tianzhan had naturally come as well. They flashed over and descended beside Yi Futian. They could feel that the atmosphere here was a little mysterious. Wuyong faced the crowd and said, "The elder acted rashly. He tried to seize Emperor Qua's inheritance in the ruins, and so he was swallowed up. He died at the hands of Emperor Qua's flames of the way. After that, the world changed, and all of it disappeared just like you all saw." Although the 9 tribes often invited people to open the gate to the ancestral lands, they never thought of giving away what Emperor Qua had left behind. If Yi Futian was strong enough, he could deter anyone, and even become the head of the 9 tribes. But at that point, Yi Futian's level was not high enough. If the 9 tribes knew that he had received Emperor Qua's inheritance, they would not let him go. They would have to make him give it up, or take him from it at any cost. Moreover, at that moment, none of them knew what had happened in any detail. The cultivator from the Zhu tribe looked at Wuyong and said, "Wuyong, do you think anyone will believe what you are saying?" Yi Futian and the Wu tribe were not the first ones to open the gate to the ancestral lands. He had been in there as well, and he knew what it was like inside. Now the ancestral lands had disappeared, seeming to fly away like ash and smoke. Wuyong was telling him that there was no reason for this. It had just disappeared. Was that possible? And Wuyong, You have not cultivated to a high enough level. He stared at Wu Yong, and a powerful pressure stretched out from him. But Wu Yong was now at the nirvana level. Everyone could naturally feel it. Their gazes all fell upon Yi Futian. Lord Yi, did the ancestral lands disappear because of you? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.